and language are. And again, I'm being metaphorical. It's much more complex than this, but in general. So the research, or the experts say, because when I say the research shows in this particular area, it's kind of the consensus of experts that study kind of these biological intelligences. Howard Gardner kind of started it with the 7 intelligences, and since then, at Duke University and a lot of other places, people have studied, okay, what does it really mean? How many intelligences do we have? That kind of thing. What we've looked at the Institute is we've broken it down to about 11 biological intelligences. Your spatial dominant, which is right parietal lobe, which really fits into our society at the moment. We talked about Jobs, Wozniak, Dell, Gates, Allen, Ted Turner, those guys. They tend to be right parietal lobe dominant, where they can put systems together and put them, everything on a computer. Then you have social dominance, you have musical dominance, those kind of dominances. But what we've done is we've built an educational system that primary fires only the left temporal lobe, where finite math and linguistics is. Let's imagine that you're born with an overabundance of neurons in your left temporal lobe. And what we do is we have these 11 biological dominances, and they're represented by an overabundance of neurons and neural material, dendrital branching, in different parts of your brain. When we do a brain scan of someone, we can recognize that no 2 brains on the face of the earth are exactly the same. Each one is unique. No 2 neurons connect up in any brain in the same way. We all think differently. Why? Because really we're a species of 7 billion forms of unique intelligences, which are basically adaptation fuel to our species. The more people we have thinking different thoughts, the more opportunity we have to fit changing environments. So it's vitally important that each of us continue to work off of our gift. Our gift is that overabundance of neurons in one of those 11 areas that hooks up with the other 11 differently than anybody else's. That's why each one of us is an expert in something our neighbor isn't. And when I first learned this kind of information, I was fascinated. I'd go into 7-Eleven and I'd start asking people questions, or gas stations, and I'd go, well, what do you like to do? And somebody would invariably tell me that, I love baseball. I'd go, well, how do you love baseball? And that person had memorized every batting average of every player in the American League, and he'd done it without any work at all. I never could do that, right? So everybody has this genius. And when you recognize that, what you recognize is that they've got, from a biological standpoint, he has an overabundance of neurons that he's born with, and a genetic predisposition to select in information in an arena that somebody else doesn't. So, but here's what happens. You take a mouse, a man, or an amoeba, and you lock it in a small box, and you only give it information to one part of its brain year after year after year after year, do you think you end up with a healthy organism? No, it really would seem that you may damage the organism. How? Well, let's step back 1 second. When those neurological structures are activated that are your genius, it's really a base of what we call the meaning network comes from there. That helps you access what's meaningful to you. Like people that are nurses, in their kind of compassion area, they have an overabundance of neurons. As I said, kind of engineers, the right parietal lobe. Teachers, the left temporal lobe. So when you're accessing that area, you get joy. Dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine increase. Your life becomes more joyful, happier, and you select in more data because you need those neurotransmitters to help select in the data. Now, what happens when I take somebody who's not primary left temporal lobe, which really the school system is built on left temporal lobe, finite math and language. I drop them into the school system. You're getting 20 watts of power through your carotid and vertebral arteries. That's naturally going to your gift. So when you're a child and you're playing in preschool, right, or in your neighborhood or whatever before you enter kindergarten, you're just doing what you want to do. You're eating dirt, you're playing music, you're beating on pots and pans. You're naturally going to what your primary intelligence is driving you to do. And you're getting dramatic meaning from it. You're self-satiating your meaning network. Now I take that organism, that child, out of that self-directed, self-satiating environment, and I drop them into an environment in which the only way they can survive is to shut down what's meaningful to them, unless they're left temporal lobe. And what I do is they have to shut that down and redirect the blood flow to their left temporal lobe to survive. Now, what does that mean to the 20 watts of power from the carotid vertebral arteries that were going to your gift? Now I'm redirecting it to where you have to spend your energies to get an A in class or to pass or to get out. So what do you think happens to that area of yours that's your gift? Then what is access? Allows you to feel joy, happiness, and excitement about being alive. It's what lets you feel alive. Well, what happens is it begins to shrink. It's not getting the neural energy, the glucose and oxygen it needs, and what it was designed to do, grow. So what we end up with is really literally millions of people exit the educational system with their primary genius atrophy and their primary neural structures, which allow them to self-satiate with joy by doing meaningful things. They graduate from school and they go, well, little Johnny, you've spent 15,000 hours in your classroom and so many more thousand hours studying, and you've memorized all this stuff. What do you want to be? He goes, I don't know. What's meaningful to you? Video games, and girls, right? So really what we've done is we don't recognize it, but when you look at our educational system through the eyes of biology, what we're doing is we're causing the very structures that we need to satiate and find meaning in our life. We're atrophying those structures. You can't lock somebody in a box for 18 years and not let them self-stimulate what's meaningful to them. Because when they get out, they don't know what's meaningful to them. So what do they do instead? Well, there's drugs, sex, alcohol. You switch to those things, even codependency. Because what you can do is you can falsely stimulate that circuit of the meaning network by doing things that jumpstart the meaning network. So then what happens? Excess food, sex, drugs, alcohol, those kind of things become meaningful because I don't know how to self-satiate. So in a way, the system itself, this is what the research is leading us to believe, is that the system itself is driving us to become an addictive society.